the changes that I made to the course, because obviously with a week out of school, there are some changes that I had to go in and do. And I try, you have two options, right? Like either I can take everything and start doubling up, or I can take something out. And I just feel like at this time in world history, I don't think this is the time to be adding. So what I did was I removed some things, and I want to go over them with you just so that it's clear, because it's going to be a little bit different from the syllabus, obviously, since we missed this week. So I pushed this week, the stuff that we were supposed to have last week, into this week. So we'll be finishing Othello this week. I took out, wait, I took out the discussion that we were going to have this week and pushed that back too. As a matter of fact, I took out 2 discussions overall. So we're going to be going from 12 discussions to 10. Okay, I'm getting a note that I'm lagging, but I'll do my best. I'm recording, so if you need it later, you can watch the video. But I took out 2 discussions, so instead of 12 discussions for the term, now we will be having 10. I don't think that matters too much in your grade. I don't think too many of you will be crying about that, but I just felt like when I get to March, I'll explain to you why I did that. I took out a whole piece that we were going to do in May, and I felt like it was rushed anyway, and it's a super depressing piece. It was Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, and I just don't think that we need to do that anymore. So I just took it out, and there was a discussion that was attached to it, so I took that out. So anyway, I took some stuff out. I moved this stuff around. We're going to finish up Othello on Friday this week. It is a B week. So on Friday, we will talk about essay number 1, which I also pushed back the date for. It was supposed to be due this coming Sunday, but I moved it to the middle of March. So we'll talk about that. I know that you probably have been thinking about your Othello paper, but it's kind of hard to choose a topic until you finished reading Othello. So we'll talk about the essay a little bit on Friday. Also, I will talk to you about the midterm. The midterm is about 2 weeks away. So I wanted to make sure that you had a study guide to start looking over prior to that. So I'll make that available to you on Friday. I have a few fine-tuning things that I'm finishing up with it. I'll share the midterm study guide with you on Friday, and I'll talk about the exam, how it's structured, what the expectations are for it, how it works, and all that stuff. So when I was thinking about essay number 1, moving it from Sunday the 28th, I thought, well, I could just move it 1 week ahead. Like I'm moving everything down, I'll just move that one down. But then I thought, if you have a paper due on the 7th, the same week that the midterm is happening, like if I was a student, I would be like, do I work on the paper? Do I do the midterm? I don't have time for anything else. So I just decided to move the essay all the way down to the Sunday after spring break. Now, I'm not saying you have to work on your paper during spring break. I'm just saying you could if you wanted to. If you want to turn it in early, that's fine. The place where you can submit it will show up next Tuesday when I start unit 3. It will be, the submission is on that unit. So if you wanted to turn it in before spring break, shoot for the 14th, that's fine. I was thinking, let's just not double up with the midterm. So that's why I put it down here on the 21st. It also gives you a good opportunity if you want feedback, if you want, to do a draft or a portion of a draft and share it with me and get some feedback on it, then it gives you an ample opportunity to do that. So I'm hoping that works a little better overall. And let me see what else. Then we'll start with discussion number 4 next week. I pushed that back. It's about Othello. We're gonna be reading Paradise Lost, but it'll be about Othello. So I fixed it so our discussions are basically gonna be about whatever we finished the week before, if that makes sense. Originally, Gulliver's Travels was supposed to be leading up to the midterm, and instead I pushed it to after spring break. So that means that I will not be putting anything from Gulliver's Travels on the midterm. I'm just going to move those questions onto the final exam, because I'm not going to test you on stuff that we haven't worked on, and discussed in class. So I split it up that way. It makes more sense to split it before, because then we would just start the romantic period, but I'm not too worried about it. I'll just take off the questions from the midterm that were about Gulliver's Travels and add them to the final. This also gives us an opportunity to have a little break in April. Originally, we had like 5 discussions in a row, but because I decided to reduce the number of discussions, we do have a break that first full week of April. So I think the fact that we had that storm situation made a little more breathing room in the schedule, and I was able to, kind of relax a few things, and not, since I took that one piece out. And then that leads into the final exam. You'll notice that the midterm and the final have a few days blocked out. I want to talk about that a little bit. The midterm that's coming up here, hopefully I'm not lagging anymore in the video, is spread over the course of 4 days. So you can take it at any point in time during those days. So, if you do have to do it in one sitting, but you can choose when you want to take it during that time frame. Same thing with the final. That's why it's on across several days there. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the responses for discussion number 3. I was looking on Blackboard. I know there were some password issues. Several people contacted me that they had password issues from STC getting into Blackboard, or people have internet issues too. So I think everybody posted for the original discussion because that was prior to the storm, but I don't want to grade them until everybody has a chance to do the responses to your classmates. So I put the due date yesterday, but I'm going to just give that a grace period through the rest of the week. So if you haven't finished all of your responses for discussion 3, just try to get those done by, the end of the weekend, like this coming weekend, since I pushed the paper back and all that other stuff. So if you're having internet problems, it gives you an opportunity to find a way around that or get those solved. If you are finished already with your responses to your classmates, then I'm going to go in probably tonight, tomorrow, and start grading those. If you have all 4, like if you have your initial response and then your 3 classmate responses, I can grade those and put the grades in. And the reason why I would want to do that is because the report cards for East are due on Thursday. So if you're not finished, it's okay. I'll just give you an incomplete for the 4th 6 weeks until next couple of days, and you finish off those responses. If you are finished, then I'll go ahead and enter that grade. There are only 3 grades for the 4th 6 weeks in the East grade book. So I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get that grade for that final average. So hopefully that's enough time for everybody to finish. If it's not, let me know. Or if you know of somebody who's struggling with their internet, let me know, and tell them to communicate with me. But if you don't want an incomplete on your report card, then try to get those finished by like Wednesday afternoon or so that I can turn in my grades on Thursday. Any questions about that? Do the changes that I made make sense to you? Any questions about any of the changes to the schedule? Do you know if we're going to have to make up the days lost last week at the end of the year? I doubt it. I don't know for sure. What would normally happen is we would have to use the weather day in April, which is over Easter. This is Easter weekend. And usually they put a weather day right there because if people traveled or if they traveled. So I don't know if they're going to make us come to class on that day to make up one of those days, or what I think is going to happen. I think the state is just going to say everybody's waived from that week because it was the whole state that was affected. So I haven't heard anything about the end of the year. I think what's going to happen is it's just going to be a waiver. Just offset it. If I hear something, I'll let you know. I'm getting a question about, can I still turn in responses today? Yeah, I was just talking to the class about that. I moved the deadline to yesterday just to give people an opportunity, but there's still people with internet and electricity problems. So I'm gonna really give people until the end of the weekend to finish those. I didn't want to add another discussion onto this week. The only glitch with that is that my grades are due for East at noon on Thursday. So if it matters to you whether you have an incomplete, then you should do your response by tomorrow so that I have time to look at it. But the only issue with incompletes is really if you need to be eligible for something, you have to clear up an incomplete within a week. But there's only 3 grades, so I don't want to just give everybody who hasn't done it a 0 and then just close out the 4-6 weeks. I want to give those people an opportunity to finish. So hopefully that makes sense. Anything else on any of these changes? I hope that you see that I was trying to make changes in your favor so that it would be helpful to you. Okay, we want to get through Acts 3 and 4 of Othello today. My plan is to go through the study guide. I'll talk a little bit about some of the complexities that are happening at this point in the play. In case you wanted to take notes, I'll also ask you if there's anything from the study guide. The study guide for today is a little bit long because I condensed 2 acts into today's discussion. So I'm thinking that we will wait until Friday to watch the ending part of the film version. We watched through Act 2 already, so I'm thinking I'll just play Acts 3, 4, and 5 after our brief discussion on Act 5 on Thursday. That way we have time to get through Acts 3 and 4 today. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the study guide for that. I'm not going to go through the study guide myself, but if you're, probably already looked at it, if you have a question from the list that you want me to spend a little time talking about to enrich your notes, you can just put the number in the chat. And when I'm done kind of talking generally about some of the features of Act 3 and Act 4, then I'll answer any numbers that I see over there in the chat, and that will give you an opportunity to add to your notes that you already have. So the thing I think that's most important about Acts 3 and 4 is that this is where we really see Iago and all of his machinations, all of his plans kind of coming together in order to convince Othello that Desdemona has been unfaithful to him. Now that's not an easy task because we saw how romantic they were with each other just in Act 1 and how much they loved each other. We heard their love story, how they fell in love and they run off to elope and all of this really grand romantic stuff. But then by the time Act 4 rolls around, Iago has already been successful in convincing Othello that Desdemona is cheating on him with Michael Cassio, which is not true, by the way. He's just bending situations to make it look like Desdemona is fooling around with Michael Cassio and using certain events that occur to his advantage in order to convince him, because his whole goal is to bring down Othello. He hates him that much. I find it especially evil, and probably you do too, that Iago is able to do this and still Othello thinks he's the most honest and truthful and loyal friend. So even as he's doing all these plans with the handkerchief and situations where Cassio and Desdemona are together and Iago says, that's weird, and brings it to Othello's attention, the way he gradually leads Othello to believe that his wife has been unfaithful. And the whole time he's keeping himself innocent in Othello's eyes. And that's especially evil, I think. And, that's the kind of person that, man, that's a scary kind of person who can do that. So there are a couple of different things that contribute to Iago's ability to perpetrate this manipulation on Othello. One of them is the relationship between Desdemona and Cassio. It's important to remember that that is an innocent relationship. They're friendly. They whisper things to each other sometimes, but it is not a romantic relationship. It's a platonic thing. But Iago will twist it and make it look like there's something going on. For example, when they arrive in Cyprus in Act 2, and Desdemona is anxiously awaiting the arrival of Othello's ship, she holds Michael Cassio's hand for a bit, like for comfort, like he's her friend. And Iago sees that and makes much more out of it and says, I'll use that, because they have proximity. The two of them are standing next to each other sometimes or sitting with each other sometimes. And so he uses those innocent situations and twists them to make them look evil. That's one way that he's able to convince Othello that Desdemona is being unfaithful. Another thing that is the handkerchief. There's this whole scenario around the handkerchief that Othello gave Desdemona when they were first courting, or when I was young, we would have called it dating, and now I think y'all just call it talking. I don't know what your children are going to call it, but that's the idea. He gave her this special handkerchief, and it's special because it was his mother's, and it's magical. It's got some sort of special, it was dipped in some magical thing, and some Egyptian lady gave it to his mother and said, as long as you have this in your possession, your husband will always be faithful to you. And so his mother gave it to him. It's got strawberries like embroidered on it. So it's special. He gave it to Desdemona, and she's keeping it as a treasured memento. Well, she ends up losing it, and Emilia gets it and gives it to Iago because Emilia doesn't know why, but Iago's been asking her to get it. And so then he's able to plant it on Michael Cassio and make it look like Desdemona gave it to her lover. So that's another thing that makes it a little bit easier for Othello to believe that Desdemona is being unfaithful. And even though he says to Iago, because Iago says, oh, one night we happened to be sleeping in the same room. I think they say in the text in the same bed. Don't get any crazy ideas about that. But he says he was talking in his sleep, and I heard him, saying to Desdemona how they had to cover up their love and whatever. And this is intriguing and scary for Othello, but he says, I need ocular proof. I think I put that in there in one of the quotations. In other words, I need to see it. And so the handkerchief is the way that he can see that. What ends up happening is Cassio finds this handkerchief. He's like, what the heck is this? I don't know what this is doing here, but it's kind of cute. And so he gives it to this woman, Bianca, who is in love with him. He doesn't really give a care about her too much, but he asks her to take it and make a copy of it. Like he likes the design of it, so he says, can you just embroider me one just like it? And so that's how Othello will end up seeing it and thinking that Desdemona gave it to Cassio. So that's the third thing. That's the second thing. The third thing is Bianca. Bianca is another reason that Iago is able to convince Othello that Desdemona has been unfaithful, because she's the one in possession of the handkerchief. Desdemona doesn't know Bianca, so Desdemona wouldn't have given it to her. And so Cassio is known to go around with that Bianca, so they just assume that, and it's a degrading thing for Othello. He's offended not just at the horror of his new bride sleeping around on him and the realization of that, but the horror that she would take something that was so sacred to their relationship and give it to her lover, who gave it to a prostitute. you know, that's just so demeaning to this gift that he gave her. It's like flushing their relationship right down the toilet. So throughout Acts 3 and 4 is where we really just start to see that plan go into effect, and we start to see how Iago is able to really, it's a complex plan, but he uses everything to his advantage. And you can really see through these two acts the setup for the final tragedy. And we see also Othello's really quick downfall. He doesn't spend a lot of time going, Desdemona? Could no, she wouldn't do that to me. Like, he does that, a little bit of that, but then all of a sudden he just believes it and he's just outraged. So it doesn't take much for him to be convinced, and it doesn't help that Desdemona keeps begging Othello to reinstate Cassio, which Iago set that up too. So I think that's kind of the key thing for Acts 3 and 4 is the manipulations that Iago goes through during those two acts. Are there any questions on the study guide that you want me to spend time going over? I don't see anything in the chat. I will tell you that these quotations that are on here, some of them are on the midterm. The midterm is not multiple choice, it's all written. So, I mean, I'm going to change it a little bit because I have to change some of the pieces because we're not going to be doing Gulliver's Travels until after spring break. But there are, I think, 15 short answer questions and 5 essay questions. And so in the bank that they've created, there are maybe like 150 terms, quotations, characters, concepts from the historical stuff. And you'll just get random, like out of the 70 possible short answer topics, you'll get 15. And I don't know which ones you're going to get. And some of them are quotations that will ask you, you know, who said this, what's the context, and why is it important to the piece. Could be a quotation from Beowulf or Canterbury Tales, or it could be a quotation from Othello, and then you'll have to connect that up with its significance in the piece. Now, I already know which quotes are in that database, so I included them here in the study guide. Does that mean that you're going to get all of these quotations? Of course not, because it's going to be random, but I've already put them here. So as you're looking through the study guide, if you look at a quotation, you don't know who said it, maybe that's one that you want me to talk about so that you can get some notes and you know, some background on that particular quote and hear about how it might be significant to the play overall. So not all the quotes that I have on the study guides are on the midterm. I would say maybe half of them. They're all significant, but maybe half of them are significant enough that they're on the midterm as optional, as ones that you might get. So look and see if there are any other quotations that you want me to talk about. Also, at the end of the study guide, this one's a little bit longer because it's got the 2 acts there. At the end of the study guide are these key concepts. And I put them also on the Act 1 study guide and also on the Act 2 study guide. That's because on the midterm, one of the revolving questions is about theme. So you could get a question that says, explain how the concept of jealousy is presented in Othello and what we learn about it through that play, like, or create a thematic statement. So if you are already paying attention to that as you're studying each act, you would already have a lot to say and a lot of ideas about that. If you ignore this, then you're going to have to come up with it at the time of the test, right? So I put the list there because all of these are options on the midterm that you might get a question like that. Does that make sense? I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm assuming that means that you feel like you could answer all these questions fairly well from your reading. So last call for any of those. I usually have 6 or 7 that people want me to do. They usually ask me at least a few in first period. I'm only saying that because you're the ones competing with them for your GPA. Aha! GPA was the magic word. Okay, got it. Do you mean 5 right here on Act 1? I mean Act 3? I think you mean this one, right? If it's this one right here, let me go to the text. So, okay, yeah. So 5, if the gentlewoman that attends the general be stirring, tell her there's one Cassio entreats her a little favor of speech. Now, Cassio is the one who's speaking there. And at the very beginning of Act 3, this is important because I'm going to go to the text over here. Because at the end of Act 2, Cassio got in a lot of trouble. Cassio ended up wounding the governor of Cyprus and has fallen out of favor with Othello and is completely demoralized. His reputation is in the trash. His future is questionable. Just in that one act of, because he was drunk, he wasn't supposed to be, he really ruined his relationship with Othello, and Othello, because Othello has to do the political thing and be outraged that one of his men would stab the governor. So at the beginning of Act 3, we see Cassio trying to save face. He's trying to get back into the favor of Othello. And this is key to the manipulation that Iago is perpetrating on Othello, because the more Cassio tries to get back into Othello's favor, the way he does it, well, the way Iago suggests that he does it is to go to Desdemona and say, you know what, Othello's mad, he's not going to want to talk to you, but Desdemona can go and intercede for you. And she promises in Act 3 that she'll do that. She says, I won't stop talking about it. I'll constantly be talking to the Moor about your good qualities and how you should be reinstated into your position. And every time he turns around, I'll just bug him until he does it. And she doesn't know the other side of it, which is that Othello's already suspecting that she's having a relationship with Cassio. So Othello views it from his perspective that she's trying to get her lover back into his position so that it's easier for them to have rendezvous and all of that. And of course, that's completely distasteful to Othello. So that particular line is it's after the clown. By the way, these are not clowns, right? They're just usually musicians or drunk people or something like that. Let me look back at the quotation because he says that a couple different times. The gentlewoman that attends the general be stirring. That's Emilia. So he says that right here at the bottom of, well, really at that first page at the beginning of Act 3, Scene 1. He says, if the gentlewoman that attends the general be stirring, that's Emilia. Tell her there's one Cassio that entreats her a little favor of speech. So Cassio knows that he wants to get Desdemona to talk to Othello about reinstating him, but he doesn't want to go directly to Desdemona because she's in bed with Othello at the moment. He can't just knock on their bedroom door. That would not be good. So instead, he talks to Emilia first. And Emilia reassures him, oh, Desdemona's doing everything she can do to get you your spot back. I hear her talking about you all the time and trying to get Othello to give you your position back. So that is good for Cassio, but not good for Othello or Desdemona. So, but it's unbeknownst to them anyway. So that's what that quotation is about. It's about Cassio trying to get his position back, but it's also part of the one-sided manipulation that Iago is perpetrating on Othello and Cassio and Desdemona. Yeah. All right, any others in the chat over here that you want me to go over? Usually there'll be something in the quote that gives you like the quotes that are selected for the midterm are long enough that if you know the material, then it's going to be obvious who said that. There's enough clues in the context of the quotation to help you figure that out. If you don't know the piece, if you read some summary and you didn't read the actual text, it might be harder for you to do that. I mean, I don't know. Or if you let it go and didn't ask questions when you had the opportunity. So like this one right here, I probably would not use this on the exam by itself, number 21, oh monstrous, monstrous. I might remember that comes from Othello, but I might not remember who said that or what the context was. The longer ones are more like the ones that you would see on the exam because there's enough meat there for you to figure out who's talking. I mean, oh monstrous, monstrous, that could be Hrothgar, right? So you have to give enough in clues in the quotations that it's doable, but obviously it's more easily doable by people who know their material. All right, I think that's it. I did put a picture down here. I like to put images sometimes on study guides because I don't know, it helps you visualize. But here we can clearly see, here's Iago, right? And he is talking to Othello. Othello has his hand up to his head, so I'm assuming this is toward the end of Act 3 or in Act 4 when Othello starts to believe that Desdemona has been unfaithful with Cassio. Because look at the way Iago is just sort of like constantly buzzing in his ear, but Othello just thinks of him as a true and faithful advisor. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions over the study guide, then I will sign off. We have Act 5 on Thursday, so there's a study guide for that. Maybe look at that a little ahead of time too. You could use that, like as soon as you're done reading Act 5, go through the study guide. You don't have to sit there and answer all the questions, but ask yourself, could I answer that question? Could I answer that question? If you have too many no's, then you probably need to reread. Like maybe you were distracted or it wasn't sinking in or something. Yeah. And then we do have class on Friday. I don't think class will be a full length on Friday. We'll talk about essay number 1, especially in terms of the fact that Othello, we finished reading Othello, and we'll also talk a little more detail about the midterm. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off then. If you missed part of this lesson or if it was patchy, I'll upload the video before I leave to go home today so that you can access it if need be. Otherwise, I will see you all on Thursday. I'm glad that y'all are safe and warmed up. See you later.
Bye, Miss. Have a good day.
Bye, you too.